Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode number 43 of the D.M.C podcast with your host today. Kind, humble, and handsome. Yeah, it's me, Adam Rigby, and my very special guest today is a triple threat with bronze, brain, and beauty. She has a heart as big as a planet, a brain as complex as the galaxy itself. She is a Fit 45 and Les Mills trainer. She is a doctor of psychology. She is a founder, trainer of Remix Coaching and Consulting. She is here to serve and save us all. She's a dear, dear friend and a wonderful woman. Bex Bell, kia ora, welcome.
Kia ora, Adam. Thank you so much. What an intro.
We got there, eh?
Yeah.
We got there.
Yes.
We got there. Thank you so much for catching up with me and us today on another stunning day as summer rapidly disappears. It's been a hot minute. It's been a while since you and I caught up. Obviously, you've moved from Wellington down to the beautiful South Island and call that your home now. And we met originally, just to frame it up, through Les Mills, and obviously fortunate to have time to spend with you, to see you in action, to see you basically work your ass off to a place where you were an absolute master of your profession, and to see you teach was always inspiring to me, not only in terms of your athletic prowess and the way that you attacked every moment, but just how every ounce of effort and energy that came through from you was raw and real. And I love that about you. I really love that about you. And it's something that I really miss too, seeing people like you in an element where you know that's where they belong. So to have you here and chat to you today is a real treat for me. I just want to say thank you. The impact that you have had on my journey, even though it may not seem like much to you, seeing you in action was always an inspiration to me, and showing me how it should be done and the benefit of hard work, and also, you know, self-belief in the face of absolute fear and doubt and chaos that group fit only group fit can provide. How are you?
I am very well, thank you, and I'm incredibly humbled by that introduction and your feedback, because I would say exactly the same about you as well, and the ridiculous inspiration you are on that bike, and just as a human being. So thank you for having me here and to have live chats with you guys, because it's one of my favorite things to do, and I know already my cup is filled up. So thank you for a selfish thank you for the opportunity to do that. But I'm very well, thank you, and soon to be even better from this conversation.
Yeah, bless. Those that have come across you and your page, we'll see the messages, we'll see the motivation, we'll see the way that you help people. And if I go back to your, and I think this is really relevant in terms of your Instagram header. I help driven high achievers optimize potential by healing their inner critic, reducing stress and strengthening resilience.
Yeah.
That's I mean, that in itself is a mouthful, but an amazing mix of positive reinforcement and messaging. What I'm really keen to do is rewind and go right back. Can you remember the moment that brought you to this, that inspired you to actually get to this space? Like, you can talk about the journey that starts through group fit, but obviously something inspired you into that space. There was something in you in terms of helping people. It's in all of us, but to action it is another thing. Can you remember a moment or a person that actually inspired you, called you to action?
Yeah, oh my gosh, there's so many. It's so hard to pinpoint, but I think I have always wanted to help somehow. I think right back to memories of being a little girl. I have a distinct memory of when I was at kindergarten, and there was a young boy in my class that always seemed really sad and kind of on the outer. And I have this memory. It's not really specific. It's just a vague memory, but of always wanting to sit down with him and talk to him, because I felt, I don't know, there was something there. I thought he needs a friend, he needs, and that I was all of 4 probably. So that's one of my earliest memories. I was always attracted to animals. I used to want to be a vet because I wanted to help the sick animals. But then I thought, no, I can't do that because I actually get too sad when animals are sick. So I can't be a vet. Then I wanted to actually get into medicine. Specifically, I used to want to be an orthopedic surgeon. Don't know why. So clearly I wanted to help people that needed their bones fixed. But then I moved into, I think when I was 16, I had a very, almost like just a straight out epiphany that I thought, I want to be a criminal psychologist. And I went to the library, actually here in Marlborough, and I found a book, I think it was called Mindhunter, written by an FBI profiler. And that was when I was like, yeah, that's it. I've totally got to do that. In fact, I did want to work for the FBI, but then I realized that I was probably a bit hard because I need to go and move to the States and get a green card or whatnot. But I did actually end up going to Victoria University, and I did my studies in psychology in undergrad. Then I did postgrad, so honours in psychology, and then a PhD in forensic psychology. So I did actually follow through on that. So I didn't actually end up becoming registered as a psychologist, a forensic psychologist working in, like corrections and stuff and treating people. But the journey of my PhD was to do research in prisons and, talk with people about their lives, about their offending, about, their cognition. I did, my thesis was all around, we'd call it impulse control. So I was working with very high risk violent offenders that had obviously issues with impulse control and emotion regulation. So that was sort of the flavor of my thesis, but we did heaps of other research too in my lab. And so I just, again, I was drawn to prison I don't know why, but as a place where people are hurting, people are wounded. They from that place of being wounded were wounding others. And I just felt a compulsion to help somehow, which is why, research plays a big role in understanding how to help in the best possible way. From there, I then, what did I do? I ended up working for the university, again, in a helping role where I was in charge of all of first year psychology. So 800-900 first year psychology students. I sort of was their leader, if you like, helping there, which was immensely rewarding and difficult because that's a lot of first year students to lead, and it's very difficult in first year psychology when you're leaving home for the first time and going from secondary school into university. It's a massive shift. Then into more helping, I worked for an organisation called Te Herenga Hauora, which is the health promotion agency. So a government organisation where we were essentially translating advice from the Ministry of Health to the public. So social marketing of health and wellbeing advice. That was awesome, just a completely different spin. And then I sort of thought, okay, there's still something missing here. I feel like, I think when you work for government, a lot of the time you end up doing stuff like contract management and procurement and stuff like that, which was like, yeah, nah, not really me. So I actually asked myself one day, a good couple of years ago now, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, if, what would I be doing if I had my ideal job? What would it look like? And that is how Remix Coaching and Consulting was born. which was, it's taken me a while to get to the place where I've narrowed it down that what I do love helping with is helping people heal the inner critic, manage their stress, manage their energy, and build resilience. But that's kind of how it all came to be. And there's just sort of so many experiences that came together, so many people that inspired that journey. And of course, Les Mills is part of that as well, the fitness aspect of just bringing together all aspects of our well-being and our resilience, the physical part, the mental part, the emotional part, honoring the darker sides of our being, which, I started with in the forensic psychology work I did, and also helping to build the lighter parts of us, the good bits, all of it matters, all of it can come together. And I just love anything to do with helping people optimize their potential, whether they are already in a good space or whether they might be trying to turn their lives around from something that has actually been really dark and destructive. That's the journey to date.
Wowzers. And kudos to you, like the roll of honors, and how many years were involved in study from go to O?
Oh my gosh. Well, actually more than there needed to be, because probably about 10, but you can do a PhD much quicker than I did. But part of that, my fuel for wanting to help people heal their inner critic, is because I was really paralyzed by mine in the process of, trying to do a PhD, really expecting perfection from myself, expecting myself to have everything figured out already, feeling like I didn't belong in the academic world, telling myself I wasn't brainy enough or competent enough to be there. And that actually held me up. It took, it meant that my PhD probably took me nearly twice as long as it needed to, because I was sort of fumbling around doing the research work that I was more comfortable with and totally avoiding the kind of academic stuff that I wasn't comfortable with. So yeah, about 10 years. But so it turns out I could have probably gone to medical school anyway to be an orthopedic surgeon, same amount of time. But it's, the massive learning journey through all of that in more ways than one.
And I guess too, when you're going through the process of the study, and reflection is a great thing, right? But as you've been working with people, and you talked briefly about your own demons and the stuff that you're facing, is that something that you came across through helping other people? So in the process of helping other people with situations, does something resonate with you to say, hey, that's totally me? And has that allowed you to take a step back and work more on yourself to enable you to help others?
Yeah, I think it's a constant kind of interactive process when you're working with people that I think I've always been a deeply kind of introspective, reflective person. So I always am analyzing myself, which is a double-edged sword. It's not always good. And I've always been interested in kind of what makes us human and our common humanity, if you like. So I think that's the beautiful thing of working with people, that I am definitely not, the expert that's got all that. Am I allowed to swear on here, Adam?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's got all their shit sorted. Like I absolutely don't. I'm on the journey too. I am, you're over there on your mountain climbing it. I'm over here on mine. And we're both just, trying our best to reach the top, whatever that looks like for us. And, I can share things that help people learn about them, but I most definitely am learning from the people that I work with all the time too. Whether that is, a senior manager in government with, leading a huge team, or whether it's, a murderer in prison. I know that sounds a bit kind of in your face, but I've learned many things from people that have walked a completely different life to me. And that's why I valued those experiences so much.
Man, that's intense. I mean, that's like you say, it's a conversation to the extreme. I guess there's a couple of big things that I wanted to talk with you about today, and I'd love to really unpack your time in prison and the learnings there. But I mean, today's time is like no other, and it comes up in every conversation. The disruption, the energy, the combative nature of everything, everything that's happening, what the press is saying, what the people are saying. I mean, for a lot of us, and a virus that still continues to run rampant through the globe, causing havoc and continue to cause havoc. Fuel prices higher than they've ever been. Grocery prices hiking. Kiwis face to face, fighting each other inexplicably, but wanting exactly the same things. It's just gone nuts. Hey, it's just gone nuts. And for me, and I guess, I can speak for a wide number of the population of Wellington, specifically in the city, who are involved directly or had been affected directly. The energy of the city changed dramatically, and the vibe changed dramatically. And as a result of that environment, people's attitudes changed. And even for me, I found myself in an absolute funk. And being an empath at the highest level is always difficult, especially when you're feeding off other people's vibes. You're trying to help people, but when everybody's in pain. But to experience when an entire city is in pain is something way different. And I've managed to slowly work my way out of it, and thanks to conversations like this and talking to other people and trying to find ways to fill my cup. So that's really what I wanted to talk to you about. The main throw of the conversation today is when everything unravels, when everything you hold dear seems to be falling apart, when people are suffering, when one side says this and the other side says that, when you find yourself at 50% and you just don't know how to pull yourself out of it. That's a big question, hey? What are some of the tools or advice that you can give people, like a focal point, something to work on, something that can assist us in just moving forward?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And so, I mean, God, it's the energy's even been heavy here, and I'm not even in Wellington, but it's you're so right that it can easily feel pretty hopeless and helpless at the moment, added in with the situation in Ukraine, which, you know, is wow. Okay. So I think that, it is so easy to just get in a funk and think, what the hell am I supposed to do to get out of it? And there are lots of things we can do, but I think one of the most important things is just to give yourself permission to be in the funk in the first place, because I think that we can often spend so much mental and emotional energy almost on asking the question of like, okay, how can I fix myself? Like, how can I get out of this? What should I do? And we get panicky about it because we assume that, we're somehow failing at life if we don't feel okay. We're fed messages all the time that, by media, by social media, that life should be grand and we should be happy and up and energized all the time. And I think if, any group fitness instructors listening will probably feel the pressure of that. We're trying to carry everybody's energy and keep everybody up all the time. But the reality of life is it does have suffering. There is pain in life, and sometimes that is the volume on that will be turned up louder than other times. And at the moment, the volume is turned up pretty high. So it starts with huge doses, I think, of self-compassion, of learning how to relate to yourself as your own best friend, and giving yourself permission to feel the heaviness and to feel your feelings, to check in with yourself and actually ask the question of like, what am I feeling right now? What is it? Is it anxiety? Is it just a general heaviness? Is it intense fear, what is it that, even just naming our emotions for ourselves goes a really long way in helping us to deal with them. So rather than trying to fix them or make them go away, we just create space for them and allow them to be there without, resisting, pushing away, or judging ourselves for how we're feeling. That's a massive thing that can mess with our emotional resilience, is judging any emotions as good or bad or right or wrong, and essentially trying to fix ourselves. So that would be my first tip, is tune in to your emotional landscape and try and label for yourself how it is that you're feeling without any judgment. This of course is sort of the essence of mindfulness, being aware and without judging, just letting emotions come and go. Because the reality is, what we know from research, from neuroscience, is that emotions absolutely will come and go if we let them. I think there's, you might see it quoted sometimes that physiologically, in terms of, the chemical response in our body when emotions come along, that they only really last about 90 seconds. 90 seconds. But the reason why we get so bogged down by uncomfortable emotions is because we cling on to them and we judge them and we tell ourselves narratives about them, like, oh my gosh, it's never going to feel happy again. The world is doomed, and oh my gosh, we're all, none of us are ever going to feel happy or light or peaceful again. I think the reality is we will, but right now it feels heavy, and that's okay. It's that belongs here. We can create space for it. We don't have to like it. We don't have to love it. We don't have to want those feelings here. But right now, they are here, and that's okay. So I think that's probably one of the most helpful things I personally have, use every day, actually, when I catch myself in some kind of resistance, which is quite often. None of us want to feel unpleasant emotions or that heavy energy. So we typically try and push it away, but it's actually remarkably hard to just flick a switch and change how we feel. We don't have a switch on our brain that just instantly changes how we feel. We can't just think our way to feeling differently. But actually the raw edges can easily be taken off the emotion when we just actually let it be there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess in essence, it's okay not to be okay, right?
Exactly. That is the take-home message. And we hear it all the time. And I think we understand it intellectually, but it's actually putting it into practice. So actually, even out loud, saying to ourselves, I do this, I truly do this. There's wonderful work by Dr. Tara Brach, she's a Buddhist meditation teacher, and she's also a clinical psychologist. So I would recommend to your listeners, if you want to check out her podcast too, after this one, of course. She has a technique that she says that, like, just put your hand on your heart and say, it's okay, this belongs here, in relation to whatever emotion is showing up. And then if another emotion comes along, and this too, and this too, it's just making space for it all. It's making space for the not okayness, and not just in our mind, but literally practicing how to be okay with not being okay. And it is hard because we're wired biologically to want to be okay. All of our system, our brain and our body is wired towards wanting to seek pleasure and avoid pain. So that's why it requires practice and actually doing stuff, not just sort of thinking about it and say, oh, it's okay to not be okay, actually practice it.
Is it, I mean, and it's fascinating, like you say, where a lot of the behavior is pre-wired and it comes down to survival instinct. Is that why the body holds on to pain? Because what it's actually trying to do is protect you from going through that again, like, putting a knife in a toaster. But we attribute that to, we store a lot of our emotional pain in there as well. Or we're not necessarily conditioned to do that, but is that something that everybody does, or is that a certain type of person that just starts to think, my mental process is now I am filing my emotional pain where my survival instinct should go, and therefore every time I go into the bank, it's going to pull back this response where I go, oh, I can't get into the situation because I got hurt, and that brings back a bad memory, therefore I get sad. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. And yes, we absolutely do that. So all of our system, everything about our nervous system is wired for protection and self-preservation.
Yep.
And that's whether we're facing a real threat like a tiger, or a perceived threat like social rejection or shame or embarrassment, anything like that. And yes, the body does remember. The emotions do get filed in the body, and that's why sometimes we can have such incredibly strong responses to stuff and we don't even know why, because it's sort of like, our conscious brain is not really, it's just not there, but we just automatically have these reactions, these impulsive, emotionally reactive responses to stuff. And because our body does remember, and that's why it is so important to try and process difficult emotion and acknowledge it and create space for it and let it be there and then let it go. Because when we don't, it just kind of gets jammed in there, and it just keeps kind of more and more, tricky emotions are held on to. And that's literally why, we can feel it in our body, right? You can feel tension in your body. You can feel heaviness in your body. Emotions absolutely manifest physically. And it's also why we get sick.
Yeah.
Immunity starts becoming compromised. So it's all linked. That's why I love this stuff, with the link between mind and body, fitness and well-being, because it is absolutely not true that mind and body are separate. They are not. They're completely intertwined.
Yeah, and I guess the complexity of life is the one thing that does us in as well, because the component of physical pain that we experience now compared to the other psychological stress or emotional pain is way less than you think a couple of 100 years ago, when we were running around in bare feet throwing sticks and stones to catch our food. Now we're more worried about our profile pic.
Absolutely.
and what our friends think about us, and what type of shoes we're wearing, and all of these types of things.
Yeah.
that the big corporations are driving down our throats. So I guess by nature, our body is doing exactly what it's designed to do, but where the threat is, or it perceives the threat, is way different in today's society. And I see that in the young ones too, not really understanding physical pain, but definitely feeling the scarred and the burden of emotional pain.
Oh, and it's huge. That's massive.
Yep.
I'll just share with you a really interesting study that was done a few years ago that showed essentially, you scan people's brains, and the bits of the brain that would light up when we are literally physically hurt, like if a needle went into our leg or maybe even punched in the face, the same bits of the brain light up and are activated when we feel socially rejected.
Wow.
So yeah, the nature of the pain may be different, but our brain and therefore our whole body respond in just the same way. So social threats, bullying on social media for the young ones, and all that kind of stuff, which is just terrifying. It's very real. It is very real. And our system, even though the modern times look very different, we are still carrying around this prehistoric software in our brain that's still responding in the same way as a real threat from a predator. Yeah, yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's come down from, I better hide in this cave so I don't get eaten, to Katie says my ass looks fat in these pants.
Yes, exactly.
So Katie fictitious. Katie didn't actually tell me my ass looked fat in these pants, but it was just an example. Yeah. So do you think? Are there tools? And I'm sure there obviously are. And it's hard to fast track these things to say, yep, in a moment you'll get over it and you'll be able to overcome all of these obstacles.
Yeah.
You spoke before about starting to acknowledge some of those moments. Is it a matter of trying to or get to a space where you can high five them on the way through, or if you experience them again, if something comes up, is there a process that you can go through to acknowledge it, to try and let that pass so it doesn't float up again? How deep rooted are these memories, these emotions, and these painful moments in the brain? Can they be rewired, or can they be slowly filtered out? Can we pull a little disc out and replace it with some positive thoughts?
Yes, they can. I think it takes a while. Gradually, gradually you can do stuff with them, absolutely. And the brain is such a malleable thing. It used to be, back in the day, it used to be thought, once you get to whatever age, your brain stops developing and that's it. It just slowly declines into old age. There's such a thing called neuroplasticity, which is about the brain's ability to just keep learning, to keep reshaping itself, to rewire, to create, new neural pathways. We're doing it every day. Yeah. And it absolutely is a thing. It is possible. And I love that because there's so much hope in it as well. So I think you're right that you can, if you have a difficult memory per se, you can learn to reframe it while, I guess, acknowledging that, it is what it is. It was a painful, difficult thing that you experienced. It's okay that you struggled with it. But we can, for example, take learning from it. We talk about stuff like post-traumatic stress disorder, but there's also such a thing as post-traumatic growth, for example, which, we are probably... we can all move through this really difficult time at the moment with growth from it as well. I mean, I don't know about you, but have you grown as a person through these challenges? What have you learned?
Yeah, I think what I've learned is, I mean, I've spent so much time in looking out for and after other people, and I think that's actually distracted me from looking after myself. And taking me out of the things that I really feel passionate about and need to do for my own health and well-being. So that once I stopped doing that, the byproduct of that was I wasn't actually the best version of myself, or my cup wasn't full enough to be able to help in the capacity that I wanted to help. So I kind of withdrew just a little bit, and even in reference to the podcast, feeling as though I needed to be in a space and up and alive and active and all senses firing to be able to help and assist and project the message that I want to project. In essence, that probably was the opposite. I should have been in those moments here, talking, expressing, conversing, learning, growing, sharing. But yeah, for me, when everything else is so great, everything else is going so well, and it was amazing how this instance just threw me off.
Yeah.
So what I got back to was just reminding myself of the importance of me going out for a bike ride solo. The importance of me sitting down and putting on an audiobook and listening, the importance of me just the joy that making a coffee for my daughter in the morning and still making her lunch as she goes off to work, the joy that I have of bringing my wife coffee as she's sitting in her desk in front of her double screens, tapping away with headphones on furiously. Just the joy that I have potting around the house and mowing lawns and all of that type of stuff, all of the very, very simple things. I just kind of lost myself in that. So what I did was I took the guilt out of putting myself first.
So important.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah, and just recognizing that, in order to help people, in order to talk the talk, I really needed to walk the walk.
Yes, I think, and you have touched on two major things there. I think, in terms of, I know that people, I do it too. We listen to podcasts because we're like, what's the tips and the tricks? I need to get to the tips and the tricks. What are they? And so you've touched on two of them actually, in terms of, stress management, increasing resilience. One is get super clear for yourself on what you need to be well, because well-being is an individually defined thing. Well, a collectively too. It's not just about us on our own, but it means different things to different people. So you've just shared some of your definition of well-being, which is the simple stuff, the bike rides, the podcasts, the learning, the making coffee for people that you love and care about. That is Adam Rigby's version of well-being. And so those are the things that we need to keep checking in with, to ask ourselves, hey, am I doing enough of this? The energy's heavy now. The world feels heavy. I need to really turn the dial up on this stuff, and I need to do it guilt-free. And the second thing, so that is a tip and a trick and a strategy. Get clear for yourself on what your personal definition of well-being means. And the second thing is put very solid boundaries in place that protect time and space for those things. And, quite often that requires saying no to other things. And I know that some people, including myself, cringe about the idea of saying no. Yes, hands up, people. I even have a t-shirt that says "People Please Anonymous," right? Who belongs to my club? Yeah. We can talk about that topic too, but it really is, there's a reason why when you board a flight and they go through the emergency proceedings, that they tell you that in an event of emergency, put your oxygen mask on first. There's a really good reason for that. Exactly like you said, you cannot be of service and to contribute in the ways that you want to contribute to, your listeners or to your family, your friends, the people in your gym classes, if you yourself are depleted. It's okay to say no to things. And sometimes it's just a case of having some very basic, language there for yourselves. Because I know a lot of people struggle with but what should I say so that I don't sound offensive, But it's just, thank you so much for the invite. I'm unable to make it. Simple as that. And that's okay to protect that time, more time and space for yourself. So there's two key strategies there that I couldn't recommend more. And how are you feeling now? Did it work? Did it help? Do you feel topped up?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny actually, because I'll give you a pretty good example. And my daughter's very much, my oldest daughter is very much like me, very in tune, an empath, and it's liberating and frustrating in the same breath, and can carry a significant amount of weight. But so she's moved out now, and I do miss her every day, just having her to hang out with and chat and sit on the couch and see how her day is. But we still obviously keep in contact. She comes to class. We see her every week anyway. But packages, as they do arrive on our doorstep from couriers, a variety of clothing items, etc., that the girls seem to immerse themselves in, and that's fine. They earn their own money. I'm trying to coach them through the process, but what do you do? But a package arrives, and she opens it and she hands it to me, and it's this. It's you see that?
Beautiful. Yes, I can.
Yeah, and she said that she saw it online, and she said that it spoke to her, and that she felt at that stage that was something that I really needed. So in terms of this is a timely spiritual anchor for me. A timely spiritual anchor. And believe it or not, I was gifted a pounamu through Les Mills. When you go through the filming experience, they give you a pounamu. And years ago, too many years to remember actually, I gifted it to Annabelle because I felt her need for it was more than mine. And the reason I was given it was to gift to her.
Wow.
So that from that moment, it's something that I knew I would not necessarily get returned, but that something would come to me in its place, and it has from her, which is incredibly special. So in terms of that yeah, I guess knowing that someone's in tune enough and to know what I'm feeling and be compelled enough to purchase something, which is an incredible treasure, and a timely treasure to me, something that I've always known was coming to me, and the timing seems to be perfect, as it always does. And so obviously I wear it close to my heart. So having the opportunity to have a human on that planet that I've been somewhat responsible for to do something that kind, is very centering and has a huge amount of gravity. So just want to say to my beautiful daughter, thank you so much. You know I love this. You know I love you more. But this is something incredibly special for me.
That is so beautiful. And I think it brings up a whole nother aspect as well to the, how do we deal with such challenging times? And kindness is one of those things, whether it's to your family or random acts of kindness to other people, is huge. Because I think, when we turn on the news and we see the types of scenes that we're seeing in the Ukraine, we can very quickly, come to the conclusion that human beings are effed,
Yep.
and we are horrible, and the
Yep.
world is horrible. And we start, I have felt so much anxiety recently for my young son. I have a 2.5-year-old young, beautiful wee son called Hunter. And I just think, what world are you growing up in? And honestly, the anxiety is like clutching at my throat. But I think one of the things that can really happen is coming back to, I think what Buddhists would call our basic goodness, like there's so much good, and we can share that with random acts of kindness that don't take away the horror and the big problems and the fact that Kiwis were at war with each other on Parliament grounds. Like, it doesn't take that away. It doesn't minimize it in any way, but it still makes a difference. Every tiny act of random kindness, it makes us feel good, and it makes somebody else feel good. And I was just talking the other day with people about there is such a thing as givers. Givers high, I think. Adam, like, runner's high.
Yeah.
Like, all the endorphins, and you're like, oh my God, it's like the best drug on the planet. Well, there's also givers high, which is when, you do something kind for somebody else and you get the same response in you as you would had you received kindness. So It's like the beautiful reciprocation of awesome feelings from one person to another. And I think even more special sometimes if it's a total stranger, just paying for the coffee behind you, or it doesn't even have to be money related, but that stuff can go a long way too when you're not feeling that flash yourself.
Yeah. And it just reminds me that there's so many good things in the world. There are so many great people. There are so many kind small moments that get overlooked, and it's easy to sensationalize everything that's going on, and what's going on is horrible in the world. Obviously with Ukraine, my heart goes out to the people, and even the Russian people who are still going through an incredibly tumultuous time, because everybody will get scarred by that event, and to the Russian population that live here, the emotional outpouring that they have as well, to the sports people overseas, the Russians that are getting affected. It's a terrible time to the people of the nation who just want to live their lives like we want to live their lives, except they've got tanks roaring through their towns and they don't know whether the next thing that comes through the window is going to be a flipping shell. And that's and that's also a massive kick of perspective, because when I think about especially the protests in Wellington, and we talk about freedom, and the protest about the threat of freedom that we have in this nation, comparative to what else is going on in the world, that's where there was a huge amount of anger for me as well, and I wasn't really used to that. That threw me. It's very polarizing, right? It's very polarizing on the other side of the fence. What I did do is remove myself from conversations, because there was no win or lose in the conversations. You either thought one way or the other, But what I did start to do is shift focus to other things that were probably best served for both parties talking about.
Yes. Yeah. And that's a boundary. Perfect boundary in action there. You know,
yeah,
I need to myself. Yeah.
Absolutely, for the benefit of moving forward, because again, it's just all you're doing is adding fuel to the fire, especially when you come up against resistance. And I mean, I've become very, very good at listening. And look, I understand that it's important for me that it's great to be amongst like-minded individuals, but Cody and I've talked about this before, you know, what you don't want is an echo chamber. It's important that everybody has, or you're surrounded by different opinions that challenge you, because that's how we evolve and grow, right? That's how we learn most of our lessons. But this was a situation like no other. And then we go from people complaining about freedom. There was a very good snippet on Facebook. That was a guy talking about the effect that the mandates have had on him, and he was filming it from a motocross track. So he was out doing something that he was incredibly passionate about, talking about the impact that it had on his freedom. I'm like, well, mate, honestly, really, the irony. But again, for me, that was where I went. That was my view, pushing me into that space, looking for reasons to really object.
Yeah.
You know, and work against what he was trying to say, but also taking the time to listen to what he had to say.
Yeah.
You know, I think everybody has an opinion, and we've got to bear in mind that it can come from generations, that knowledge can be generational, or the lack of knowledge can be generational as well. The bias, the prejudice can be generational. So it's very interesting to take the time to listen, challenge your own opinions always. I think I'm a big fan of that. But also, if you're passionate about something, you know, stick up for yourself, and be in an environment where you can be given the time and respect to listen, but you can also be given the time and respect to talk.
Yes, absolutely. And I think you brought up a really awesome point there too about the anger taking you by surprise, which is, I think it's so important for us to acknowledge that the last couple of years has been a huge test on our emotional agility and resilience. And I think it's really important to take a moment to actually congratulate and celebrate ourselves for still being standing right now. Because if someone had told us like 2 years ago, what was about to happen, I mean, we would have been like, you've got to be kidding. You know, this is like the stuff of zombie apocalypse movies. And yet, here we are, still standing, still moving forward, still doing the best that we can, you know, still working a full-time job and homeschooling children. You know, it's just, we are so much more resilient than we know. And I think we can easily forget that because of our pesky brain's negativity bias that thinks about all the ways, you know, fixates on all the ways that we're failing or falling short or aren't good enough or haven't made enough progress yet, without actually stopping to say, hang on a minute, look what we've actually been through and navigated the last 2 years. That's big time. And it's really important for us to collectively celebrate that.
Yeah, and with every situation, physical and emotional, giving yourself credit for where you are, for every obstacle and hurdle that you've faced, for every moment and every memory that comes up that was painful. And I think a pretty powerful tool for me is acknowledging the fact that I got through it, and it's not a bad thing to say, look at me now. Look, as a result of that accident, that day, that date, that time, that moment, it has actually shaped you into the human being that you are today. Some can view that as a massive negative. Some can view it as a massive positive, but I think the ability as a human being just to overcome obstacles and hurdles, a lot of it is maybe self-driven. You got yourself out of a situation. It may be the situation where you needed to call on other people and friends, and acknowledging the people in your life that you had at that moment and maybe potentially still have, or the recent season lifetime, someone that helped you on your journey. But here you are, having the ability to talk about situations like that is a win, right? Having the self-awareness, the ability and the courage to share those moments with other people is a massive win as well.
Yes.
Because I think sharing those with other people, and giving them, not that they necessarily need it, giving them permission, but letting them know that it's okay to open up and talk about moments where you've been challenged, because that's in essence, I think, what we are here to do. We're here to learn, we're here to grow, we're here to share, and we're here to give.
Agreed, 100% agreed. And I think there's nothing, I find nothing more comforting than knowing that I'm not alone in my struggles, because I think what can make struggles feel so struggly is you think you're the only one, right? You know, it's like, I am the only person that is feeling this immense sense of dread right now. But no, actually, no, it's, you know, it's worldwide at the moment, and it's okay. And we will move through it bit by bit. And you know, sharing stories with each other, if you're comfortable and at a place where you're happy to do that, can offer so much comfort to other people. So just like I hope us sharing today is offering comfort to whoever's listening or watching.
Yeah, and I mean, you imagine a scene where, as volatile as it was, as the fire went out, the shields dropped and the bricks went down, and one side says to the other, "Hey man, I just want to provide for my family," and the other side says, "Me too." And the response is, I just want a country where I feel safe, where I feel free, where I can make decisions, and I know there's a future for me. And the other side says, "Me too." And it was exactly the same in that chaos and carnage, two sides clashing, wanting exactly the same things. And again, my heart went out to those that were involved initially with a view to, we want to do this peacefully. We can succeed with our message peacefully. And also the other side, to our brave police who put their bodies on the line. These are people, even recruits that were coming out of police college, who would never have dreamed to be in that situation, to be thrust into that type of violence. I couldn't even imagine the fear. I couldn't even imagine, even day to day. I've had friends that have been in the police force, friends that are still in the police force, and the stuff that they have to deal with on a daily basis. Just, man, I tell you what, I cringe, and sometimes some of the stuff you just want to curl up, because reality is, society out there, the majority of us have no idea what's happening, what's bubbling in the underbelly of this nation. We have no idea how bad, how cruel, and how horrible some people can be. And our police are in the direct firing line each and every day. If there's violence in the street, if there's someone wandering around with a gun, who do we call? It's the police. They have an intention to help all people. So to see them in that situation, fighting against people that wanted exactly the same thing, was horrifying and painful. So my heart goes out really to both sides. But the police, I did see the following day when everything was being cleaned up and there was 3 police officers walking. I just walked past on my way to the gym and I said, "Guys, I just want to say thank you. You're doing a wonderful job. And from me and the city, I just want to say thank you." And the looks on their faces, you know, because they're scanning around looking, they were like, what just happened? What just happened?
Guardian angel just came across our path. Kind person.
Yeah, but just to acknowledge, obviously suffering on both sides. Again, it's going to be polarizing. One side will see exactly the opposite. again, that moment that I talk about, that when the shields drop, everybody wants exactly the same thing. It's very hard to see that when you're heightened, and one stone led to many, which was a shame. But it's part of our history now. We just have to work through it, and most of all, we have to learn from it, and we have to make sure that that type of shit doesn't happen again.
Yeah. And it starts with, like you said, about when you take the time to understand, like you did, you were aware of that, and that reactive anger, but then you were able to step out from that, give it space, acknowledge it's there, don't try and make it go away, but step out from it, and then try and listen to what the motocross guy was actually saying. Like, that is how we learn, and we make sure that it doesn't happen again. And it's the same turned inward. When stuff is hard, be aware, tune in, and take a moment to listen to yourself. What do I need? Why is this showing up for me? And that's self-compassion. And then listening and understanding extends into other compassion as well. And that's how we move through this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I finish off everything by just, usually when I get the opportunity to speak in front of people, the last thing I say to any group fitness class, and even the podcast, if you can be anything, be kind. And again, we've hit on the fact that, of course, you have to be kind to yourself. You have to give yourself space and permission to feel and to experience, to acknowledge that. And of course, when you're in a position to do that, I'm not saying you have to become the master of it, but it's very easy to be kind for others. And it could be holding a door open. It could be a smile is also, one of the most contagious things around is actually a smile.
Yes.
Probably pushed into second place now compared to other things that are going around like lightning.
But I think people are much more receptive to the contagion of a smile, and not as opposed to the contagion we're talking about at the moment.
and that too. But as you said, this time will pass. This time will pass, and certainly, with the planet has gone through a massive learning curve. Again, there are not just two sides. This is a dodecahedron of theories, and I'm sure there's validity in every single theory. But what it comes down to for me, in the midst of all this chaos, I just want to make sure that my family is safe. And that includes my beautiful 86-year-old mum, who I have the pleasure of still going out for coffee with each and every week, sitting down, having a cake, chatting about life, giving her a cuddle, and thanking her for all the years of grind and mahi that she put in, so that I can put my best foot forward and be the best version of myself today. So, that's what I'm fighting for at the end of the day. Generations. And I think about the timing that my mum, the times are way different, right? The expectation of what we should be as adults and where our kids should be in terms of timeline is completely different. When they got married, when they had children, the plan was all worked out, right? Based on, you do your 9-to-5 job and you come back and you have sausages, potatoes and peas. And if you don't eat your dinner, you can't have any pudding. And that would be ice cream and peaches, and that would be your treat.
Yes.
Everything was almost preordained to a pattern, and we know that life is way more complex than that. But I also acknowledge the hard work that the generations prior to me have put in, and even the wars that they have fought, the experiences that they have gone through, so that I can live and laugh and love and share this beautiful place that I call home. It's very interesting. Actually, I was at a wedding in the weekend, which is touch wood. Everything is all good. I'm super healthy. But moving on quickly, seeing actually the thing I love about weddings, and I hark back to that, is is, and there's a couple of components to this really, is seeing generations on show.
Yeah.
Like seeing generation upon generation generation, and the acknowledgement of the part that they play in the life and the moment, which is to families coming together, an acknowledgement of the past and also a celebration of the future, right? But you get 3 or 4 generations in some cases to witness that. Unfortunately, I lost my grandparents very, very early. I have very limited memories of them, apart from a little bit of research and chats about who they were as people. But reading about people is very different to experiencing people, because it's someone's words, right? It's not directly from the source. So I did get to miss out on that. So thankfully, I've managed to over the years spend a bit of time with the parents, and look, unfortunately, the quality time that I really got to deep dive with my father was 2 weeks prior to his death, which is a condensed, challenging, but also quite liberating time. But seeing the impact, and again, it'll go right back to the start of the conversation, and you were saying in terms of your prison inmates, seeing the habits, the mannerisms and the quirks from one generation slowly weave its way through every consecutive generation in terms of behavioral patterns is fascinating. Is absolutely fascinating. When you see a father, when you see a grandfather who has a quirk or a mannerism or a habit that has been passed down 3 generations, is like wowzers. And that's also not physical, that can be emotional as well.
So for sure.
Yeah. So if we can go right back to when you're going through your period of study, and especially in terms of the prison environment, how do you unpack that? Is that a common theme that came up a lot in terms of this is all I know, or is it something that they were thrust into an environment that was completely different? Is it 60-40, or do you find it's generational? I only do this because this is what I know.
Very much so. I think I don't know what number I'd put on the, whether 60-40, but intergenerational transmission is the, if we want to get flash about it, is the terminology you might use, was huge. And I spent a lot of time talking with gang members where it was all they knew. That's, from day dot, that was their life.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why we learn so much from what we see. We learn from, we take on behaviors that are normalized for us. And so I think that's why it's not an excuse for, violent behavior, for example, but I think why I had so much compassion and tried my best to understand was because, if I'd grown up in that environment, I don't think I would have been doing a PhD. Like, I probably would have been a gang member too. Like and it comes back to what you were saying before about, when the shields were dropped, at the very essence of it, we all want the same thing. And it's the same with people who, the men that I spoke with in prison, they want the same thing as I do. They want security. They want power. They want to matter. They want to fulfill a bigger picture purpose. But it's just misguided. It just happens to be antisocial because that was often their norm. There is no difference between me and them apart from our behavior. But at our very essence, we are human beings. We want the best for our life. It's just we were going about it in 2 very different ways. And I had the privilege of not having the type of, upbringing that they did. And again, I'm not excusing that because we all also have choice in our life. We have agency, we have autonomy, but it's very difficult to, make a totally pro-social choice if all you've ever known is antisocial. It's a little bit hard just to see the light when you're, a child and think, oh no, my whole family's in a gang, but I'm going to go the other way. But sometimes it does happen if we have, protective people in our lives that can show us a different way. That was often, the case, that people that might have gone one way or the other, somebody believed in them or showed them a different way. Yeah.
And environment is everything, right? Environment is everything.
I mean, genetics, little bit, but nature, environment is massive. It is.
So how do you break that cycle? Is it something that's unbreakable? Is it just a moment in time where it's up to the individual themselves just to say enough is enough, and to understand the potential that they have? How do we reinforce, not so much force, but how do we express to those people the opportunity that's on the other side? Is that even possible?
Yeah, I think so. It's not absolutely. I think it's not straightforward. It's not quick, but it's often helping people. It's not telling people anything, because that doesn't work. And that's whether we're talking about people in prison or people that are, if people are told by their GP, for example, that they must lose weight because their health is suffering, that's often not very effective either, unless it's like crisis point, in which case it might be effective. But it's helping people decide for themselves. So helping people to really see the mismatch between their current reality and their desired reality. So, for the guys in prison, oftentimes there were some bits that weren't adding up for them, like that they were missing out on children's lives. They were getting sick of the prison life. But it was kind of helping them to see that there's more costs to them than benefits anymore, or rewards.
Yep.
And that was so often why you'd see people just kind of come out of the life when they get a bit older, because they're like, I'm a bit effing over this. I'm too tired. I'm too old for this. And they come to that realization themselves, even after a lifetime of prison, crime, antisocial behavior. And so I think it's always self-determined, right? It has to be, the motivation has to come from us, but that doesn't mean that other people can't shine the light on, maybe, hey, what if there's a different way? What might it look like if you took a different approach, or there's another perspective? Or what might it look like if you didn't have to keep going back to prison? What could your life turn into then? What would you like it to turn into? And it's very tricky. I mean, behavior change can be very hard, especially when you've got often society going against you. There's a lot of stigma, understandably, around people who have done, crimes and have, tattoos everywhere, and they look intimidating, and, but absolutely people can transform and do complete 180s. I've seen it. I have seen it. It is absolutely possible. And again, I will keep saying that's true of whether we are offenders in prison or just you and me. So that, and there's something in our life that we want to do that we think that's not possible for me. Well, it is. I promise you it is. That's my message. It is.
And it's that ancient archaic view of leadership. Leadership used to be survival of the strongest, and it was about beating and submissing everybody below you. And we know now that leadership is far more than that. Leadership is actually inspiring everybody to arrive at the same place, to stand on the top of the mountain with you, to share those experiences, to empower. Do you see that shift in leadership, shifting people's mental states and their ability to fight the way out of that? Are there leaders now, and I'm sure there are leaders in communities that are saying, guys, there's far more to life than this? Is there a shift in power?
Yeah, I think so. Do you mean in leadership style?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is. I think that, there are still some entrenched old leadership ways of the kind of the hierarchical dictator kind of leader, but I think people are coming around a lot more to the fact that, you know, when we're talking about leading human beings. Yep. We're not, you know, leading robots. So if we want to draw the best out in people, then, you know, see what are their strengths. You know, you use a coaching approach rather than just telling people what to do, and you'll notice that you'll probably get a lot more back from them, because people feel valued. They feel like they can, you know, utilize the things that they love to do, and it instantly, very quickly, you start to see differences in people when you take that approach with them. Right? Same with offenders. You know, value them. See them, actually see them as a valuable human being. And sometimes, I mean, that can just be all the difference for somebody when they feel validated and seen by another human being. That's why I love coaching, because I don't give people the answers, because I don't have the answers to their life. They do. They are the experts at their life.
Yeah.
And
and I think, like, you know, the acknowledgement to independently that we're actually all leaders.
Yes.
And that we're not just there to make up numbers. We're not just there to participate humbly. We're not robots and devices to be used by others. We have our own wonderful, unique talents. We have the ability to lead and the ability to share and include and inspire. And that's, I firmly believe, that's within each and every one of us. And you know, to take on that responsibility is within all of us as well. It just takes a moment, right? And a shift in philosophy. And self-belief is fucking hard. Like, self-belief is fucking hard, but it's not impossible. But all you need to do is, as you've said, is put yourself in front of someone, or find someone that believes in you. And I guarantee in your life today, guarantee 100% there is someone, you know, that believes in you. And that's the port of call. That's the first port of call. Sitting down and chatting to that person and those people like yourself, eh?
It's so true, because sometimes we just need to borrow some until we build our own. You know, we can just borrow someone else's self-belief until we build our own. And I've had to do it many times. In fact, that's how I even got started in group fitness, because there's no freaking way I would have had the belief in myself to rock up to someone and say, hey, I want to do that. I'll be good at getting on the stage and doing that stuff. No way. That's not, someone asked me to do it. You know, it wouldn't have gone the other way around. And I had to borrow belief for many years. In fact, I still do sometimes. I think it's such an important message that we can all look at other people and assume that they're confident and they've got all their shit sorted. But it is part of the human experience. And, you know, to experience doubt and to sometimes be quite crippled by it. It's normal. It doesn't have to cripple us. So the joy is in learning how to navigate that and unhook yourself from it, so that it doesn't have to shove you around and own your life. But it is very normal. We're not the only ones, you know, but it feels like we are. Like the only anxious one who thinks they're crap over here and has no freaking clue what they're doing. No, we all feel that to some degree.
Yeah, that imposter syndrome is something that comes up, and it became, you know, very relevant. A lot of people were talking about it because it is real, and it's important to acknowledge it every moment. You know, when someone asks you to do something, you're like, oh, me, why me?
Yeah.
The answer is actually in the question, that someone felt compelled by an action that you did or something that you displayed to ask you to do that certain task, or you know, you're exactly the moment where you're exactly where you need to be to experience what you're about to experience. Those are the types of things, in terms of like I say, and like you've indicated, acknowledgement of those micro moments and the power that they have, and also the power that we have as individuals and humans just to push through. Just to push through. I love that. I've always loved that. And you know, you talked about coaching. Putting yourself in front of a coach is great. Getting some tips, not really tricks, but assisting you on putting your feet firmly on a path, but the steps are yours to walk. And the initial steps may be may be flooded with the voice of your coach. But the more you hear that and the more you reinforce it and the more steps you take, slowly the voice becomes yours.
Yes.
And then that voice gets louder, and then the voice is one that you can share with others. And that's the journey for me. You know, actually a coach's job is to create coaches, I believe, right?
Yes.
An instructor's job is, the legacy is for us to empower people to actually take on the journey themselves, to be inspired enough to inspire others.
Yeah.
And that's something I've always loved about it. And the other thing I love, obviously, is they embrace the freak in us all, to celebrate the things that make us uniquely different, and to say, hey, we actually, you know, we really love that about you. I know at times you may feel stink and you've tried to hide that for a long, long time, but you know what? We really want you to showcase it. We think it makes you beautiful, wonderful, and unique. We want to help you get better at it. And when you do that, you're going to inspire people to do the same and make them acknowledge that part of themselves and recognize and realize that they've got a place that they can hang out and be themselves and be the best version of themselves. That's what that's what I love. In a nutshell. Man, so I told you the yaks would go. Like we've blasted through well over an hour of chats, and again, you're one of these people that I could just sit and talk to for hours. And I'm hoping that actually we get to do a face-to-face. If you ever do make it to Welly, let's sit down and have a coffee or a tea, a herbal tea perhaps. Chamomile with a touch of blueberry and a little ramekin of honey, rather than supercharging my personality so I can't sit still and tap my foot relentlessly on cafe. Another short black, please. Yes, why not? Double espresso. Yes. That's me.
That's me too.
Yeah, I know. I've actually got to a stage where I'm like, cut time. You know, I'm a two coffee limit. As wonderful as the coffees are in the cafes that I frequent, probably less now. But Bex, I've enjoyed the time chatting to you. I'm fascinated, like seriously, listening to you chat with a wealth of knowledge, but also the heart and the determination and the steps that you have taken to get yourself to a space where you have the ability to share. Takes a special kind of person, and I just want to acknowledge that bravery and also the mahi that you've obviously put in and continue to put in. It's what makes you wonderfully unique, but it's also what makes us all wonderfully unique. To see you supercharge that, acknowledge that side of yourself, and actually take the time to invest in sharing that with others is a wonderful thing. And I want to thank you for that from the bottom of my heart. If you do get a chance to check out Dr. Bex Bell on her socials, Remix, do it. There's some magic stuff on your Insta page, stuff that we can all learn and share from. I'd love to have you back on the show too, and just continue to vibe and chat if you're gracious enough to join us again.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
And the one thing where I put you on the spot is there something that you are compelled to say, something that you wish to share, a last, not final parting message, but just a gift, our little tinfoil bag for our viewers and listeners to take away something that'll help them through these tumultuous times that we're all experiencing and feeling?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't take away any of the tumultuous times, but just to kind of pull on the thread a little bit more of what you were just saying about, you know, strengths and your you-ness and so on, is I think it's so important to remember, and reduces so much distress, that the world needs you done your way. The world needs you done your way. And that can relate to, you know, things you want to achieve, but it can also relate to things like on a day-to-day basis, what does your way need to be that day? It might be a day where you're pushing the limits, you're achieving epic things, you're reaching out to other people, you're doing acts of kindness for other people, or it also might be a day when you need to retreat into your shell a little bit, and you need to give yourself permission to slow down, to withdraw, to just sit in the cave and process and, do what you need to do. So just, there is no way that you should be. There is nothing you should be doing. You're just as you are right now is exactly how you need to be. And you already have everything you need to live your best life, your boldest life, your most resilient life, and to make the contribution that you want to make. Roll with it. Just roll with it. Open up to what shows up for you in terms of emotions, in terms of life experiences. So another three things I would say in terms of emotional resilience, and I can't take any credit because it's said by a wonderful man called Dr. Rick Hanson, is, let it be, let it in, let it go. Let it be, let it in, and eventually let it go. And I think when we can try and approach each day with that, and with, giving ourselves permission to just be us and all our crazy vulnerabilities, our anxieties, our joy, our whatever, life just opens up and feels a little less sort of threatening and heavy. That's what I'd say.
Wonderful. Obviously you're a shining star, but a star that focuses on creating others as well. And I think the message to the people too is, you'll get to a place one day where it makes sense, where you'll actually truly appreciate and realize, whether it's looking through a photo album and really understanding how great you are, the opportunities that you've had for growth, the amazing people that you've met, the people that have challenged you incredibly at times, the people who have uplifted you, and hopefully they stay in your life for a long, long time. And if this podcast has been a part of that, I'm truly grateful. Dr. Bex Bell, thank you so much for your time, for your energy, for all the stuff you do. And from us at the D.M.C podcast, episode number 43. Till next time, and if you can be anything, of course, be kind. Thanks so much. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you can.
Yes.
Peace.
Yay. Thank you, Adam, and to the podcast listeners. Thank you for having me. Absolute pleasure, absolute privilege. And yes, thank you for your time and energy too, Adam, and the work that you do.
Thank you, mate. Take care.